Hello, everybody. It's Eric. I'm here with a very, very, very special interview this time. I usually say everything is special, but this is a very special interview. And I'm on the phone with. I'll let him introduce himself. Who am I on the phone with today?
Guy Drake.
I am on the phone with Guy Drake. Now, for the people that may hear that name and not be familiar with who Guy Drake is, please just tell them a little bit about yourself before we delve into this interview.
Well, I'm an old recording artist from back in the 1970s. My partner and I, Tom Johnson, had a band called Johnson and Drake, and we've spent many years recording albums and touring with various artists and so on, and that's who I am.
Okay. Well, where are you from, first of all?
Minneapolis.
Okay. Me being a down south Florida boy. Tell me how is Minneapolis? How is it growing up out there?
How was it growing up in Minneapolis?
Yes.
Cold.
I hear it's really cold. Is it?
Minneapolis is a very cold place. In fact, we get people laugh about the cover of the Carry It On album, which was our best-selling album from 1973. You can still buy it on eBay and Amazon and so on. And in the cover, we're wearing kind of like winter jackets, I guess is what you could call it.
Yeah.
Or like, wait a minute, why would rock and roll musicians be wearing winter clothes? Aren't they all like LA guys and Nashville guys and it's like, no, we're from Minnesota. It's cold up here.
Well, I was going to get into that album cover later because I had a whole question about that. But since we're on the topic, I think that is one of the most just coolest album covers of all time because it's just two cool looking people in like fur jackets. Like you guys look like I don't know, you guys just look cool. So I just want to know like who idea was it to put on the fur jackets? Like those are really stylish jackets. I like those. Like who idea was that?
Well, that was the idea of the photographer, but there's really a whole very interesting story around that, and the session that resulted in that album cover because we were on tour with Jim Croce and had been traveling with him for off and on for about a year, maybe it might have been a little bit longer than that, as his opening act. Excuse me. And we were down in we especially toured with him through the South, and we were scheduled to appear at a concert with him in Natchitoches, Louisiana, in October of 1973. And at the very last minute, our record label contacted us and pulled us off of the tour because they didn't like the album cover and they wanted to reshoot it. It was a different one than what we ended up with. And they pulled us off the tour and sent us back to Minneapolis to reshoot the album cover, and then eventually actually sent us to Chicago to reshoot it. And Jim's plane crashed flying out of Natchitoches to the next gig. We were scheduled to be on that flight, and it was just a freak experience that we got pulled off of that. And they flew in a comedian from LA named George Stevens to cover the date as the opening act, and but our road manager stayed with Jim and Maury, and he was killed in the plane crash. We knew everybody on the plane except for the pilot and the fellow who replaced us because we had been traveling with them for months. So that album cover was really, I don't know, there was a lot of energy around that album cover.
Wow.
It kind of saved our life.
I see. That's a crazy. I read. See, that was before we started the interview. I was talking to him about how I found him or whatnot. And it's I don't know if you've seen this, but it's an article online talking about you guys. It's a guy. He went to the record shop and he literally picked up the album and bought it just because of the cover. And he was trying to say that he didn't know really too much about you guys, but the only thing he did know was the story you just told me. So that was the only thing that I could find on the internet about you guys. So when I found you, I just thought that like music. I heard you guys' album, and I just thought that music like this shouldn't go unrecognized. And I don't know. I'm just glad that you're here to tell that. And that's a crazy story. And thank God that you're still here to tell it.
Yes, and was that the fellow in the UK?
I'm not for sure where he's from, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay, all right. I know there's a guy who has a website with a lot of information on us in the UK.
That might be him.
Yeah,
I'm not for sure.
Okay.
But how did you
That
even?
was a terrible experience. It was actually the reason why we kind of went on hiatus for a long time after that, because we were a little bit too young to cope with the scope of that tragedy. I'm a lot older now, and I've been through a few things, and I know what life can deal, but back then I was 21 years old, so
Well,
it was hard. It was hard to recover from that.
well, I'm glad you guys came up out of it. But I was wondering, just speaking about all your music that you made, what made you even want to get into music?
Well, we had Tom and I actually went to high school together.
Okay.
And started, and both of us were songwriters in high school, just working on our own. And then we sort of discovered, hey, there's another guy in this high school who writes music, and lyrics and so on. And we hooked up together back then and just started writing, and then went to the University of Minnesota and continued writing. And then we wrote a rock musical called Genesis 6, which was produced in St. Paul, and that generated some interest that ended up leading us to get a recording contract. And it just sort of evolved. We just really enjoyed writing music together, and the performing part of it sort of came out of our love of writing music. We didn't have anybody else to perform it, so we performed it ourselves.
Did you know you could sing before that? Could you say you were just strictly a songwriter? Were you also singing, or were you just strictly a songwriter in high school?
Yeah, we were both singers, but certainly our skill and ability in singing grew the longer that we were touring and traveling and recording and all of that.
Okay. Well, how did you meet Tom Johnson? You say you met him in high school, but was it like on a sports team, just in class, or like how did you exactly meet him?
We were in a play together at a theater called the Eagle Ridge Theater, and that was pretty much how we met. Was out at Eagle Ridge, which was kind of almost like a Little Rascals type of theater. We found a barn. We put up a backdrop. We got a whole bunch of people together and started making plays out at Eagle Ridge, and that was really the starting point. We were both actors.
Oh, okay. Okay, so did you ever pursue anything serious in acting?
Well, I got my Actors Equity card when I was 18, and I actually put myself through college as a union actor in the Twin Cities at Chanhassen Dinner Theaters and Dudley Riggs Brave New Workshop, and Tom and I both did. We both worked at those places and various other theaters around the Twin Cities.
Okay. Well, yeah. When you guys kind of fell out the acting and kind of got more serious into music, What were you guys like first couple of like how did you guys like start? Like was it a big success at first jump, or did you guys have to kind of like a slow grind to get to where you wanted to be at?
With the music, you mean?
Yes, with the music.
Yeah, yeah. It was a grind. I mean, just like everybody, we were able to get a recording contract, and we got we had a manager and a booking agent, and they put us out on the road. The one thing that was a little bit different about our career back in those days was we really didn't play any clubs. We played college concerts. That was sort of the milieu of the people that signed us, the publishing company and the booking company. They were heavily into booking college concerts, and so what they would do is they would buy a series of dates from an established artist, like let's say Croce, or other people we traveled with, like Linda Ronstadt or Earth, Wind and Fire or REO Speedwagon. They would buy a series of dates from those bands, and they would guarantee those dates, and then they would send us out as the opening act for those shows. So all of our experience on the road, all of our experience as performers was pretty much on the road, pretty much doing one night stands, flying into a city, doing a concert, flying out the next day to another city.
You just said a name that kind of jumped out at me. Or you said Earth, Wind and Fire. Did you actually get to meet with them? Like, were you like did you ever meet them, or were you just happen to play shows with them?
Well, no, we met. You're sharing a dressing area. You're sharing limousines. Sometimes, I mean, hotels. You're eating breakfast together. You're staying at the same places. So we definitely met, and they were, Earth, Wind and Fire. Though, I mean, they were just so amazing. It was just a thrill. Every night, as soon as we were done with the show, we would just stand backstage and watch those guys perform because they were so amazing. Jim Croce was the same way. He was such a great entertainer. So you just sort of, if you're traveling with people for a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time, which is the kind of thing that we would be doing, and again, it depends on the personality of the artist. Sometimes the headlining act is not particularly friendly towards the opening act. But a lot of times, they are. They came up the same way. They know exactly, how the game works, and they know, they were, a lot of times were very easy to get along with and nice people, and we just sort of enjoyed each other's company because there wasn't anybody else. We were a bunch of, long-haired musicians touring through the South, and we had to kind of stick together.
Yeah. well, not after, but actually before you start getting to the music industry, I'm sure you had influences, which I'm curious about. But what I'm more curious about, while you were performing, while you were making music, who were your influences during that time period? You see what I'm saying? Like, who were the influences around the 70s when you and Tim Johnson were heavily into music?
I would say that, there were a lot of them. But Harry Nilsson, Elton John, the Beatles, I know I'm forgetting people now. It's too far back. I can't remember that far.
It's okay.
But I mean, we were just listening to everything. We would just go down to the record store and buy everything that was on the wall. That was kind of current, but definitely leaning towards. It's hard to say. I mean, we just listened to a really big variety of music. But I know we were very influenced by the first. We saw Elton John live at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis in 1970. He had just released his first album, and in fact, the concert that we saw was released as an album. It was called 11/17/70. It was a live album, and he just had this rocking, funky band, which is still, except for the fact that Dee Murray, his bass player, died, that band is still his band.
Mm.
You know, he's been playing with those guys all those years. Davy Johnstone, his guitarist, and you know, the same drummers. You know, that was definitely, he was a big influence on us. We were very much into Harry Nilsson because of his fabulous vocals, just the way the guy could sing, and we, you know, we just really enjoyed so much singing together and trying to recreate things that, you know, various sounds and things like that he had been able to create on his albums. He also had a fabulous producer, Richard Perry, and we bought every single album that Richard Perry ever produced because he was just such an amazing producer. So a lot of times we were influenced more by the producer than by the artist. We went, well, if Richard Perry is producing these people, they must be good. So, you know, we would buy those albums, and we would follow, you know, just following the musicians. So, you know, all of these fantastic session players from back in those days, like Jim Keltner and Russ Kunkel, and I mean, the list just goes on and on. We were very influenced by Leon Russell, and you know, the stuff that he was doing. So, because Tom was a keyboard player, so we tended towards being influenced by other keyboard players like Elton John, Leon Russell, you know, people like that. And then we would build our band kind of around that.
It's funny that you bring up liking the producers and being so influenced by the producers, because I always think that the producer gets overshadowed from the artist because the producer is more in the background. But the producers, they play a really, really important part of the music. Like, they make the actual music that you're hearing in the background. So it's kind of cool to hear you give recognition to the people that actually create the sounds that we hear.
Yeah, that was really what we were into. Was I understand exactly what you're saying about that. It's very true. But the really great producers of that era had an amazing ability to go from artist to artist and capture the essence of that artist. And their albums didn't sound the same, even though it was the same producer. But their ability to wrap that artist up with good players and good arrangers. You know, like, we're very influenced by Paul Buckmaster, who was the arranger for all the early Elton John albums. We just loved everything that Paul Buckmaster ever did. And so, yeah, we were very much nerds in terms of looking at the back of the record and seeing who played on this, who produced it, who arranged it, you know, along with who the artist was. And many times they weren't the most popular artist out there. I mean, we were into Harry Nilsson way before Nilsson Schmilsson, which was his really big breakout album. But we were listening to him way back when he was doing Pandemonium Shadow Show and all of those crazy early albums, and then Randy Newman. Nilsson did a lot of Randy Newman songs. In fact, he did one whole album that was nothing but Randy Newman songs, and those were in the days when nobody had ever heard of Randy Newman. And so we were definitely influenced by that, by him, and his songwriting ability. We liked good songwriters, you know.
Yeah, as we all do. Well,
Right.
more about you and Drake and Johnson. I'm very curious about a little backstory because you said that Carried On is your best selling album. How many albums did you guys have before that and after that? Because it's very hard to find a lot of you guys stuff on the internet. So can you just explain about your guys' albums and discography?
Yeah. Well, the reason it's hard to find is that it's almost a half a century old now. We released Carry It On 44 years ago. So
Wow.
we had one album that came out before Carry It On, and we recorded about 3 or 4 other albums after Carry It On. Some of those never saw the light of day. They never actually ended up getting released for various reasons. Kind of the typical stuff that you hear about all the time in the music business, but problems with the record label. At one point there was a vinyl shortage. It was hard to get a record out because nobody had any vinyl. And but we still have all of those albums. We still have the master tapes and all of that for those, and we're kind of sorting out what we're going to do with that. I mean, our goal is definitely to get it back out there again.
Okay.
And but altogether, it was about 5 or 6 albums.
Okay. Well, specifically on Carried On, which is like you said, you guys' most popular album. How was it making the album? Any interesting stories making that album, or crazy funny stories? Anything? Just a backstory about making the album.
Well, we just every single record that Tom and I made, we were totally blessed with fabulous musicians that we played with. So, like on the Carry It On album, you've got a lot of guys who are, legends in the Minnesota music business, like Billy Peterson and Billy Berg, who was the drummer at that time. We played with our drummer at another point was Bernie Percy, who's played with everybody under the sun over the years. One of our other bass players, Jimmy Johnson, has been James Taylor's music director, band leader for, I don't know, 10 or 20 years. So a lot of these guys went on to really, major, long-lasting careers as musicians. And so the making of the album was we just sort of gathered up all of these really great players, and on that first album, and which included our live band, and then also a lot of other people who came in, and then Herb Pilhofer, who was our producer, brought in a bunch of players from the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and the Minnesota Symphony, and I mean, we had strings and brass, and we brought in all kinds of stuff. But we just had all of these really, really great musicians that were working with us. So the whole experience was such a it was just intoxicating, to be able to play with people that had this kind of skill and ability, and all really, really nice people and fun people, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them. We've stayed friends all of these years, and I mean, even some of the horn players that played on the album, we're still, we're still friends all of these years later. So it was, but it was very intense. We took over Sound 80 recording studios for quite a long period of time, and during that time, Sound 80 was it was just a hotbed of really really amazing music. Leo Kottke was kicking out album after album after album from Sound 80, and Bob Dylan recorded Blood of the Tracks. He came into our session for recording Carry It On, and then I don't know, either he or one of his engineers or somebody listened in on what was happening, and he hijacked our band. There were two major studios there, Studio A and Studio B, and he brought those guys over to his studio, and he recut the whole Blood on the Tracks album, which had been recorded in New York. He recut it all in Minneapolis, using a lot of the guys that were playing with us on our stuff. And they never ever got any credit for it. Columbia Records has never credited the Minneapolis musicians, but there's been a couple of books written about it. I'm trying to remember the name of what the big one was, but there's been a couple books written about the making of Blood on the Tracks, because it's considered one of his most classic records, and yet, unless you're a real Dylan aficionado, you don't realize that the players who were credited on the Columbia album actually weren't the ones that were in the final mixes. It was all this group of wildly talented guys from Minneapolis.
Wow, that's great. I never knew that. You learn something every day. I never knew. That's what we were just talking about, rather, when the producers kind of take the back seat a little bit and they don't get as much as credit as they should, like the people that make the sound. So it's always interesting to me. But before we fast forward to today, my last question about the past. I know you said after the plane crash, you and Johnson both took a long break. But what was the reason for you guys to like when did you guys depart from basically your group?
After the plane crash, Tom moved to Oregon for a period of like 2 years, and I moved to Nebraska for a few years. Both of us just pursuing other projects. I was acting at a theater in Omaha, and he was forming a dance company and a bunch of other stuff that he was working on out in Portland. And then we both ended up back in the Twin Cities again after that period of time, and then we hooked right up again and started recording again. But it was, we just kind of took a break for a couple of years during that time. And then the last album that we actually recorded, not that we haven't written music since then, but the last album that we have in the can was done in 1986. So that was 13 years after Carry It On.
Okay. Well, I lied. Well, one more question about the past. I've been thinking about it. I just keep forgetting to ask. You bring up people like Bob Dylan, all these people, big name people, and since, like I said, we're trying to get to know a little bit more about you. Was there any other artists that were, I guess, most of the mainstream audience would know that you've encountered or worked with?
Let's see, who could I mention? We toured with a lot of people. Some of them came and went, and some of them are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like Linda Ronstadt, who we played with quite a bit. And I think I mentioned REO Speedwagon. Mm-hmm. And we toured with those guys. They were a great band. Wow. I mean, unbelievable live band. There was a band called Mason Prophet that we did a lot of shows with. Those two guys, that was headed up by two brothers, Terry and Michael Talbot, and they've had a long career in the Christian music field. Both as the Talbot brothers and as releasing their own records on their own over the years. That was the band that was Mason Prophet. We played with now I'm drawing a little bit of a blank on. I should have researched this before.
It's okay.
Before I talk to you, John Hartford. Who? Just trying to think of. Ray Stevens. We did a lot of dates with Ray Stevens. He was like Guitarzan, Ahab the Arab. Everything is Beautiful. He was a very big artist in the South where we were playing a lot, and had a really robust music career, writing. Some of his songs were kind of like sort of novelty rock and roll songs, and some of them were just beautiful ballads. But he was a guy that was on the road all the time, and we opened for him a lot. Trying to think of who else, but yeah, I mean, it just depended on the where the 5-man electrical band. Signs everywhere, a sign. They were loud. That's what I remember. They were really, really loud. And a band called Spirit that was kind of a little bit of a heavy metal band. We did quite a few dates with those guys, and I remember we played Detroit, Michigan, with the band Spirit. I know who else. We did a lot of shows with Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, and she was only 16, only 16. They had a whole bunch of hits as well. Mm-hmm. A band called the band that had just a bazillion hits back in those days, called the Grassroots, and when they would get up and play a show, it was just like it was like a it was like the soundtrack to your life from about 1965 to 1975, where they just lobbed one hit song after another up there. I don't think people pay too much attention to the Grassroots anymore, but they were a really, really good band. Okay.
Yeah, I have to look them up. I've never heard of them. I'm going to have to look them up after this interview.
Yeah, you'll recognize the songs.
Okay.
When in my midnight confession, when I tell all the world that I love you. But they just had one top 10 hit after another back then.
Okay. Well, fast forward a little bit to the day, how I discovered you guys through the Samsung commercial. So I was curious, did Samsung contact you, your old management? How did that go?
No, nobody contacted us at all. The engineer that I work with, been working with for about 10 years on all the recordings we've done in the last 10 years, is visually impaired, and he was sitting in a sports bar in the Twin Cities, and this is like one of these sports bars that's got all the NFL playoff games going on different TVs. And he said, and he and I had been working on restoring a lot of our old music, and he said that you guys are on a commercial. He said, I heard it was playing during the NFL playoffs. And I said, what commercial? He goes, I don't know. I couldn't see. I don't know. I don't know what it was for. And that was sort of the first tip. And then I thought, well, maybe he might have been mistaken, but it seemed pretty unlikely because he knew our music so well, because we had been spending so many hours in the studio and kind of reclaiming it and restoring it and cleaning it up and everything. And then Tom called me, and he had heard it, and all of a sudden we found out that that the song "Hello New Day" from the Carry It On album had been sold to Samsung for a commercial for their new Galaxy telephone, and it ran all the way through the playoffs, right up until the Super Bowl. They had a different ad for the Super Bowl. But all of a sudden, we had people calling us from all over the place going, I heard Johnson and Drake on a TV commercial. What are you guys doing? Where have you been? I've been looking for you all of these years. And, we started hearing from a lot of old Johnson and Drake fans, who recognized the song right away. and so since then it's been a real interesting process. One of the weird, it's just kind of a really strange coincidence, but there was another songwriter named Guy Drake. Believe it or not,
I seen it. When I was looking you up, I seen him pop up.
Yeah, I'm Guy A. Drake, and this is a fellow named Guy O. Drake. And the people who had bought the song and so on thought that I was the dead guy.
Oh, wow.
You know, which was an easy mistake to make. Guy Drake is such an unusual name, and how in the world did two people with that name end up being songwriters? I don't know. But that mix-up between us, the two of us, has been going on since back in the 70s. And so they were astonished to find out that we were still alive. You know, it was like Tom said to me, they thought we were so dead. And we've had a real, just a really positive relationship with them. We've been talking with them and interacting with them, and they had this group, which is Tough City Records out of New York City, had bought the rights to the album from our original record label, Ovation Records, and they're marketing the songs and so on. But it's all been very agreeable, very very positive, and they're just thrilled that we're still around. And they just want to keep marketing our music. They're really fans.
I see why. Yeah.
It's kind of the best of all worlds, really.
Lastly, before I get into my last question, something just popped up in my head. I knew for as long as it just popped up in this interview, coincidentally, I've been thinking just listening to some of you guys' music. You sounded familiar. It sounded like somebody I've heard before. And I don't know if you ever heard this artist before. He put out a lot of music in the 70s, like a lot of albums in the 70s. Dude named Todd Rundgren. Are you familiar with him?
Todd Rundgren, sure, of course. Yep, I saw him live at the Guthrie also.
Oh, really? And I love his music, and something reminded me of that. And I just want to say that I don't know. Hello New Day kind of puts me in the refrain of him right there. So it's a compliment. So I'm just saying that he's another three great artists actually. So yeah.
Are you familiar with the show Live from Daryl's House?
I'm not.
Oh! You have got to go on the internet and look up Live from Daryl's House. It's Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates.
Oh, okay. I love Hall & Oates. Love Hall & Oates.
Yeah,
yes.
And he's got a farm up in upstate New York, right where my son went to college, right by where my son went to college at Bard. And he brings in musicians that have been around forever, and he's got this smoking hot house band. And they bring in these different players, and these different artists, and they record live performances of these artists playing with Daryl Hall's band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go on the internet and look it up. I mean, they got all of these amazing shows. They've done, I'm sure, 50 or 60 of them, and it's everything from artists you've never heard of that are brand new to people like Joe Walsh. And anyway, the reason I mention it is they did one with Todd Rundgren, and he lives in Hawaii, so they flew the whole band over to Hawaii and did a show with Todd Rundgren out there. He's still around.
Wow, yeah, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
That's my gift to you for this interview. Sure, you start watching Live from Daryl's House.
As soon as we hang up, I'm typing that in, so you best believe I'll be on that.
The best episode is the one with Joe Walsh, because they play all of his old solo stuff and the stuff that he did with the James Gang. And it's so great to hear all that music, like Life's Been Good to Me So Far.
Yeah. I'll be looking up all that.
All of those old great songs.
Yeah. Lastly, before we get out of here, I have to ask, what is up with Tom Johnson these days? I remember the website that I was referencing earlier in this interview, it didn't even know if he was alive or not, but the way you're talking, he is alive. So can you just...
Oh yeah, Tom had a long, very successful career in the music software business. He was he and I were helped develop and launch a software program that's widely used throughout the music business called Finale.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom was like kind of the global expert on Finale. He traveled all over the world doing demonstrations of what it's a music notation software program. And he stayed with it. I left that and went to work somewhere else, but he stayed with Finale for many, many years. The company was bought out 2 or 3 times by different people, but Tom stayed there all the way until he retired a couple of years ago. But yeah, he had a long, really great career in music notation software.
Wow. Can we expect anything from? Because I know you say you're trying to work out a couple issues with label issues to try to get out your old records and all the records. So, any timetable on when that possibly happen?
It's going to happen as soon as we possibly can. We just discovered about 26 masters that we thought had been lost from 1974 and 1975, and also from 1986. And we've just had all of those converted from tape into digital files, and everything was in near perfect condition. It just sounds really, really good. Mm. Everything was in perfect shape, and so we are furiously working on that project. We have secured a website, johnsonanddrakemusic.com, but there's really nothing on there right now except a couple of old black and white photographs of us. And then we're planning on all of that stuff coming out. So and hopefully it won't be very long. Hopefully we'll be able to get it figured out. I just had a meeting with accountants yesterday on it, and we're trying to get it, all figured out.
Okay.
But yes, we're probably going to release all of our unreleased material sometime in the next 2 or 3 months, which would be about 4 albums, depending on. One of them would be at least one of them would be a live album, because we found several recordings of live concerts that we had done. So right now we've recopyrighted everything, but we have a total of just about 60 songs, and Carry It On just had 10 songs on it. So we have about 50 more songs that haven't seen the light of day. And most of those we recorded, and we have really good versions of them done at different studios around the Twin Cities, and again always with really great players and so on. So we're super excited about it. We're working on it almost full time, trying to get it up and get it out there. So. Yeah, we expect to make a big splash here sometime in the near future. But there's a lot of things that have to be done. The finalizing of the digital copies, and maybe a little bit of retracking here and there, and getting the artwork squared away and the website built, and getting everything up there on Spotify and or iTunes or whatever. So. And this is all material that's not part of the Tough City thing. This is all stuff we did after that.
Okay.
That we've just hung on to.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of how quickly we can get it up and get it out the door. I got recording sessions scheduled all day Monday and all day Tuesday of next week. We're really just trying to inventory all of it now. We just discovered 287 minutes of masters.
Oh, wow.
Of songs that and some of it, of course, is duplicates. So it's not all different songs. Some of them are songs that we perform both live and in the studio. And we've made it through about 200 of those minutes. We still have almost another 90 minutes of tape just to listen to and see what's on there. This is stuff we don't even know. Some of this was unmarked, so we're just going through and inventorying all of that, and then we have to sort it into various albums and then get it out there.
Well, okay. Anything else? Any final words you want to say before we wrap this interview up?
Well, the final word I would say is just that one of the things that happened with the release of the Samsung record is we realized how many Johnson and Drake fans are still out there from 45 years ago. People who just came. There was a lot of activity on the net, when this came out, of people saying, they're back, where are they? I've been looking for them. I had that record when I was in college, I lost it when I got married. I've been looking for a digital copy of this stuff forever and ever. So my last word would just be just to say thank you to all of the fans out there who are still there after 45 years, and maybe maybe we've got a gift for you coming up here pretty soon, if as soon as we can get it out the door.
Well, okay. There you have it here from Guy, Drake, and me, and I'm gonna wrap this interview up. I hope everybody out there has a blessed day, and yeah, thank you for letting me interview you once again.
Thank you. It was really great to talk to you, Eric.
Okay.